will be live in seconds. Ram Karim, good evening and welcome to our webinar tonight with Dr. Rasha Nigam from the Central Bank of Egypt. My name is Andy. I've been heading a financial sector development project of GIZ for a little more than 2 months here in Cairo. So before we are going to start our discussion, I just want to say thank you to my startup team for setting up this wonderful series of webinars. Thank you, Florian, Hossein, Aid, and Ali. Dear folks, I guess without the COVID-19 crisis, I would have already met many of you, but so far, I have to admit, I have neither met too many people nor seen a single pyramid yet in Egypt. But nevertheless, I'm super happy to meet you, all of you here tonight, and I'm sure that we will be having an entertaining and a fun hour together with Rasha. But that, of course, also depends on you. Please engage with us, use Facebook, use the chat and post your questions, because without your questions, I'm quite sure I would have thousands of interesting topics to talk with Rasha about, but I'm not so sure if you would be interested in these topics. As you know, we are going to discuss fintech and fintech regulation in Egypt. And maybe we are also learning more about how the central bank in Egypt pushes for innovation in financial services in this country. If there is a good thing in the current crisis, it might be the additional digital push we are hopefully going to see also in digital financial services. And to discuss that, it is probably very difficult to find a better speaker than Rasha tonight. She has more than 90 years of unique experience under her belt. Rasha worked in some of the most well-known banks, multinationals, and leading mobile operators in Egypt. I think that is the best possible background for her current position in the central bank. Rasha holds an MBA degree from the University of Wales in England, and she holds a doctorate degree in business administration from the Walden University from the United States. Rasha, welcome. How are you tonight?
Hey, Andy, thank you so much for the introduction. Welcome to Egypt.
Thank you.
And hello, everyone, from wherever you are, Ramadan Kareem, and hopefully you're safe in this challenging time. So hopefully we're going to be fun tonight.
I'm quite sure we will have fun. And what we are going to check out now is probably the first step to have fun. We also want to know who is watching us tonight. And for that, we have prepared a very little poll on Slido. So please have a look at the Facebook channel. I think my team has already posted the link and also the number you're going to need in order to access the poll. And I'm going to share my screen now with you. So our first basic question on slido.com with the room number 90672 is, where are you seeing us from tonight? So where are you sitting? Is it also in Cairo? For example, I'm standing in my unfurnished dining room or in our apartment on Zamalek. I think Rasha is also sitting at home in her, I don't know, looks like the living room. So where are you seeing us from tonight? Is it Cairo? Is it a different part of the world? I know that some people from Europe wanted to join us tonight, but I don't see that somebody has answered the question so far. So I give you a few minutes and I also check my chat. Maybe I have already messed this up. My team, I think, is betting against me. But I read it's running. So, okay. So we have more people sitting in Cairo. Hello and welcome to the folks in Cairo. Maybe in the meantime, my team can send me a message to tell me how many people are watching us. If it's only one person, then I could go to the next question. Yes, we have more people in Egypt. In Frankfurt, hello Germany. I hope the situation is safe and sound there. Yes, more people from Cairo. I know it's not easy if you use the tool for the first time, But once you have checked it out, you may also want it to make part of your future presentation because it is fun, I have to admit. Yes, more people from Cairo are saying hello and good evening.
Shout out from the people from Cairo and Egypt, leaving all the Egyptian series and watching us now.
So there's also the first complaint. I was explained that we are using Facebook as a stream because it's easier from the technology perspective. So I'm sorry that you're not in Zoom, but of course you can post your questions via the Facebook channel and my team will post the questions to me. So I assure you that you can participate. Yes, we have Alexandria. Welcome to the Mediterranean coast and some other parts of the country. So let's go to the second question that we also get an overview in which sector you are working. Are you an entrepreneur, a banker? Are you in academia? Are you working for the government? Is a public institution the place you are working at?
Oh.
Yes, we have consultants, entrepreneurs, development organizations. Who would guess who that is? Yeah, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I think, yes, this is what I want to see, the entrepreneurs, because this is our target group, Russia. Now we have more entrepreneurs than consultants. I think that would be a good moment to leave that presentation and go back to the screen, because I think that people are super interested in what you're actually doing at the central bank. Currently, Russia, you work as an assistant sub-governor of Fintech and Innovation for the Central Bank of Egypt. And I think a good question would be to start with, can you explain us a bit how a typical week of work looks like for you at the CBE?
Yeah, sure. So pretty exciting, I assume, especially that since the inception of the Fintech and Innovation Department back in June last year, it has been dynamic with the whole Fintech and innovation ecosystem. I must say that the Central Bank of Egypt has extended its role for not just acting as merely a regulator, but actually becoming sort of a catalyst for change. Where actually our main function is to orchestrate all related fintech activities across the market to grow the fintech ecosystem in Egypt. So we're doing a lot of functions. We're overlooking the fintech strategy for Egypt. Of course, we're supporting in terms of how we're going to facilitate the regulations and for new solutions when it comes to the startups. Of course, with the regulatory sandbox function, and most importantly is that we're having a function for the digital financial service enablement or development inside the market, so we can actually enable new digital financial service that serves the aim and the objective of our national and the fintech objective. So this is basically what we're doing as a fintech and innovation inside the Central Bank of Egypt. So quite interesting.
That's interesting. When I prepared for that interview, I was to some extent not struggling, but I was thinking about the two words fintech and innovation. And I was wondering, how do you see it? Is every fintech an innovation, or is it not really necessary that a fintech is the equivalent for innovation in our market?
Okay, so let's take the simple definition of fintech, which is basically the innovative use of technology in the design and delivery of financial services. So actually, fintech is related to innovation at its core. So it's simply by using any innovation, whether in simple transactions or managing the finances of consumers, even on a feature phone like the Nokia phone that we're using or on a smartphone, whether delivering a new innovation on an existing financial service or coming up with a new financial services. It's all innovation within the financial sectors, but it has to tackle a consumer or customer need.
Interesting. What I always find super challenging is the difference because the fintech startups, they tend to be very fast and agile, and for good reasons. Traditional and important institutions like a central bank or a big lender, they of course need to consider thoroughly every little step they make. So how in your role you are bringing these both worlds together?
Well, that's a very good question, and let's be honest. Startups are stepping into a sector that it's traditionally dominated by large incumbents and big banks. So basically, the good thing about it, that's what we can see, is both of them can actually bring important solutions inside the market. So what we're trying to do is like combining those efforts while leveraging on the strength of financial institutions and banks with the agility, dynamic, customer-centric startup solutions. So a lot of initiatives that have been working on for us to bridge this gap, or like we're saying, the matchmaking. One of the recent examples is that we've gathered, because we're doing a lot of hearing sessions, like in roundtables, to hear the market and to know what are the priorities, so they can actually, all the people in the system or the ecosystem to work towards a goal to fast implement whatever priorities we're having. So based on the roundtables, the last one was on integration, where we actually came up with the national problem statements for Egypt, coming out of all the stakeholders in the market, whether investors, startups, banks, financial institutions, regulators. So we came up with more than 80 problem statements. Now the startups can know the focus of what the challenges that we need to solve, investors what to invest in, as well as it's really needed by the financial institutions to meet the unmet needs in the market. This is one of the things. We're doing a lot of other initiatives, like we're always supporting the innovation challenges and POCs with the banks, the hackathons. Not only this, we're working on, I think, the financial institution guidelines for the engagement of financial institutions. It's specifically for the financial institution to engage with fintechs. We've also working on issuing soon the Fintechpreneur, which is a guidebook for fintechs to know how to succeed, or the success formula to succeed in a market like Egypt. So basically, trying to bring knowledge to both worlds on how to talk to each other, and basically doing a lot of activities to match them together. The most important thing that I think that we're going to discuss it later is the Fintech and Innovation Hub, which is actually going to be the one-stop shop for fintechs, where all the ecosystem can actually talk in one place, focusing on the fintech goals.
Yes, indeed. We will talk about the technical issues within the next hour, but please allow me that I have one more question which is associated to your role in a central bank, because innovation, as I said before, in a traditional institution is not always very easy. So what would you say is your biggest obstacle when you want to support the fintech landscape in Egypt from your current position in the central bank?
Okay, so let me shed the light on the obstacles or the challenges we see in the market, or we hear actually from the market even when we talk to startups. That, you know, the nature of fintech is usually going beyond the jurisdiction of the banking sector. So basically, like, it's tackling the banking sector as well as the non-banking sector when it comes to financial institutions like insurance and other areas, maybe the operators and mobile networks when it comes to mobile payment and the app worlds. So basically, the startups as usually, and Egypt usually, because you've been 2 months here, so I have to say this, central bank is overlooking the banking sector. Financial Regulatory Authority, the FRA, is looking after the non-banking financial sectors. NTRA, the National Telco Regulatory Authority, is looking after the telco operators. Startups are quite not sure. Will I get my license from the central bank? Will I get my license from the FRA? Because it's very broad, and it's actually there's a lot of gray areas in the middle. So what we've done to solve this, the Central Bank of Egypt has signed an MOU to collaborate with the 4 regulators that is handling the fintech in the Egyptian market. It's the FRA, NTRA, and the AML, the anti-money laundering unit, and of course the central bank, to come up with a unified vision for fintechs and to help the startups how to license their products, what kind of regulations we're going to issue in order to help them. Another obstacle I can see from the market is, of course, financial literacy, or let's say the digital financial literacy. We know that based on a Standard & Poor's research that study that is 27% of the Egyptians are financially literate. So there is a very big room. Imagine the digital way of doing financial services, but this is even a bigger barrier. So what we're trying to do at the central bank and entice other stakeholders in the market and other banks to work on the financial literacy and financial education to the consumers, and especially the digital financial education of the consumers.
Thank you very much. I find it very interesting that you have a MOU with all the regulatory authorities in Egypt, and that you have developed a common vision. And I think the audience and even I would be super interested to hear more about that common vision. But please, before you answer that question, I just want to reach out to the crowd on the screens. Again, please put questions on Facebook, be part of that conversation. It's much more fun if we can also answer the question you have. And I just see coming in the first question. Before I going to ask that question, Rasha, can you elaborate a bit on that vision and strategy you have together developed with the 3 other regulators in Egypt?
The different strategies, you mean what we've worked on?
Yes, exactly. So what is the vision? What do you want to achieve?
Yeah, sure. So basically, one is how we're going to facilitate the licensing, even thinking of having a one single service point for us to take all the licenses when it comes to the fintech, just in case to run between the regulators. Another thing is we have to join forces within the regulatory sandbox that we're having. So not only to test products related to the banking sector, but also products related to the financial sector at large. Of course, tackling all the solutions under the FRA or the central bank or the NTRA. The thing that we're working on and how to update or even come up with the new regulations, especially on the gray areas like peer-to-peer lending, crowdfunding, and ROSCA, those kind of regulations. We're trying to see who's going to take care of their licensing, and how can we come up with the regulations? Are they going to enter the sandbox? So all those strategies, like you're saying, we're taking them together so we can actually talk to the market with one language and one focus goal.
Thank you very much. So, Rasha, we are getting some questions from the audience. I think we will stick a bit to the topic we have just started, but a very direct question is how can we get in touch with Rasha or other CBE fintech personnel? So how are you talking to the fintech scene here in Cairo? Great. How can we?
That's very easy. We have an open door policy. We already since we started, one of the initiatives that we've done is the Fintech Egypt portal. It's Fintech-Egypt. By registering into the Fintech portal, you can actually get access not only to us as a central bank, you get access to all the regulators that's there. It's actually listing all the people in the ecosystem when it comes to legal advising, investors, as well banks, as well as the regulators. please feel free to send us emails. We have a dedicated email for the regulatory sandbox. It's already on site. It's already on the CBE site, so you can actually just drop an email to the regulatory sandbox, and we're going to guide you through whatever you have any questions. We also have a short number. We have a dedicated call center for the fintech and innovation, specifically for the cohorts that we're going to start for the regulatory sandbox. But you can actually reach out to the short number, which is 16775. Otherwise, please email us or contact us or register into the fintech portal and get to know not only us, but all the regulators and other stakeholders in the market.
Perfect. I think that was a very precise question. So the CBE and Russia, you are accessible and the information is available via the website, but maybe also my team can share it again via the Facebook chat. Before we go to the next question, Russia, I also have a banking background. I'm rather a traditional banker or boring banker lending to SMEs. This is how I learned banking in Germany. How would you explain to a guy like me how you see fintech as part of the financial ecosystem in Egypt? So what role should they play in the future? What's your guess on that?
Okay, so don't worry, you're not boring. I've been there. So maybe I'm coming from this boring side of the world. It's not any longer. So that's very interesting question. How fintech falls within everything that we're doing. So let me take you one step up. With a few years back, the Central Bank of Egypt took the early initiatives to modernize the financial sector, endorsing digital financial service and electronic payments. So we came up with the Less Cash initiative. And we know that to bring this initiative on the ground, it should have been taken nationally. And that was fulfilled since the inception of the National Payment Council, headed by the president, Sisi himself. And this shows that the state commitments of this transformation that we want to reach. So the experts of the National Payment Council, they come up with the Less Cash transformation framework. So this framework has a very pillar important to me, is called the Fintech and Innovation, on how to become a less cash, of course, society. So this Fintech and Innovation as a pillar in the less cash transformation, there's a lot of other pillars like the electronic payments, the financial market infrastructure, the cybersecurity, and other of the frameworks. But I'll talk about the Fintech and Innovation because since March 2019, last year in the Youth Forum, we introduced the Fintech and Innovation strategy for Egypt. So we're working on a very specified strategy. It has been developed with one of the international consultants just to bring both the global best practices along with the market needs. So we spend a lot of time during formulating the strategy, focusing on consumer insights and doing consumer insights research, as well as interviews with the stakeholders of the ecosystem, just to grasp what we can do from there that fits in our market. So this is what actually where's the fintech fit in. It has a very important role when it comes to the economy, as per the study of the consultant economic study, that one EGP invested in fintech results in 1.6 EGP to the GDP, and one job created for fintechs actually results in 5.6 jobs, or 5.6 jobs induced out of this one job. So so it's quite significant, and we're working on a specific aspiration, is to become the flagship of financial inclusion, SME financing, and cross-border activities.
Very, very nice. Thank you, Rasha, for that. I think it became clear that fintech has a broad variety from front and back end, peer-to-peer, etc. But there is always one question related to fintechs in the financial system as well, and that's about cryptocurrencies. And the audience wants to know from you, where do we stand on cryptocurrencies in Egypt?
It's actually, we're coming up with a new law. It depends if it's the Bitcoin, like it's actually forbidden, and we've issued warning of the people trading in the Bitcoin. But when the new law is going to tackle the cryptocurrency, that anyone who's going to, we are going to issue the license for cryptocurrencies. Currently, of course, we're studying heavily with even one of the international entities on the central bank digital currencies. But this is all until the new laws issued, until we study the central bank digital currency and what we're going to do in. There's nothing else to say. We do have electronic money. If you want to have the e-money, like we call it, we have the mobile money systems in Egypt, the mobile payment and the mobile money. That it's working quite efficiently. We've now reached more than 16 million wallets having wallets on the ground. So I'm not sure what is the specific of the question, but this is all I have to say regarding this issue.
I think it was a pretty clear answer. No trading in Bitcoin, please, anymore. But you're working on a regulation for digital currencies in Egypt. Which brings me to my next questions, because when we talk about money, we usually also talk about cross-border payments, etc. How does the CBE collaborate with other central banks to foster innovation in the region, but maybe also globally?
Okay, so in a field like fintech, where collaboration actually with the other central banks and jurisdictions around the world is very important, because the field is dynamic and it's rapidly changing and there's a lot of updates. So having collaboration and cooperation with the other central banks can actually make us move faster. With the share of knowledge, with the share of information, with even sharing the best practices, the watch outs, even peer reviewing on the certain regulations. All of this makes us actually work faster, and even working on referral models. We're actually, what about sharing a solution that can actually working on both jurisdictions, or trying new solutions that it's actually with similar markets. We already having MOUs and collaborations with a number of central banks. We have an MOU with Singapore, with MAS, with Central Bank of Bahrain, with the AGGM, and we keep on building with other regulators around the world. And we've actually done something about those MOUs and collaborations, like last year in our Seamless event. I think the short lists of our innovation challenges and the pitch-offs have been already shortlisted automatically to the Singapore Festival, which is a worldwide fintech festival happening in Singapore, taking them automatically to offer their solution there in Singapore. This was based on the MOU with the MAS. The Central Bank of Bahrain has been helping us during the establishment of the sandbox, giving us all their insights. AGGM, we're thinking now, and we're studying together to do the co-sandboxing. So yes, we're doing a lot regarding those collaborations, especially in a field as dynamic as the fintech innovation.
Since we are, of course, always talking about sandboxes when we talk about fintech, of course, when I was a small child, I also had a sandbox at home, and my parents, they of course allowed me to play with my brother in the sandbox. And you can imagine, two toddlers, there was a lot of fight in our sandbox at home. So how are you dealing with competition in the sandbox and also potential damage? Because my parents, they would immediately agree there was a lot of damage in the sandbox we had at home.
Well, lucky us, our sandbox, our regulatory sandbox is virtual. So, it's a virtual test environment. Usually, the whole idea beyond the regulatory sandbox is that we didn't want to do the normal way of doing regulations in such a dynamic market as the fintech. So we had to balance between the innovation and risk. So we've launched the regulatory sandbox last June. It's a virtual space where actually we test solutions with startups that is actually facing a regulatory hurdle or not regulated at all. By putting them into a controlled environment, a very well-controlled environment with defined parameters on a limited number of customers, which can actually test with close monitoring from the regulators, not only whatever from the regulators on their solutions until they graduate. So the fintech sandbox is our sandbox is based on cohorts. This cohort is on the eKYC that we're actually sandboxing now, and we would hope to open the new cohort, but due to the COVID and the new priorities coming in place, so we thought that we might have new normals, new solutions covering the aftermath of the COVID. So we delayed a bit the opening of the new cohort till we see how things are going to end. So this is in terms of the sandbox.
And in relation to that, we have another question, and I think it fits quite well here. What is the CBE's position regarding open banking APIs?
Okay, so it is again in the new law, actually, because the new law now is, and it's a law, it's a new CBE law that it's actually under discussion within the parliament. So it's going to be released very soon. It will also tackle the new open banking. So it's there on the agenda. Meanwhile, we're working on another thing, which is the innovation lab. The innovation lab, basically, it's a shared innovation lab between the banks and the startup solution to test their solution based on APIs between the banks and the startups. So this is kind of having testing APIs to test the POCs directly with the startups on a shared innovation lab. This is going to be hopefully launched with the fintech with the fintech hub very soon.
When is the fintech hub about to be launched in?
Yeah, this is we're all looking. It's because of everything delayed regarding the. It's supposed to be launched this year, hopefully. It's going to be great. It's in the downtown Cairo and over 10,000 meters square. It's actually the historical building of the central bank. So it's going to be a blend of innovation and the modern way in a historical building, in a huge historical building. It's going to be very exciting when we open it. You're invited.
Thank you very much. I'm very looking forward to the opening party. That would also then hopefully mean that we are post-crisis situation and that we can finally meet in person again.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's going to be like another virtual sandbox.
Meeting a lot of persons is a good keyword for the next questions from our audience. It's about crowdfunding. What are the current regulations in Egypt concerning crowdfunding?
Yeah, this is one of the. I was waiting for this question actually. So one of the main hot topics that we're actually handling in the FinTech and Innovation Committee with the other regulators is the crowdfunding, because it's one of the areas where it belongs to the Financial Regulatory Authority, it belongs to the central bank, it belongs to both. So we're studying very heavily on who's going to issue the crowdfunding, whether the FRA or the central bank or both. A lot of studies has been done from the FRA regarding the crowdfunding. This is I know. So the study and the committee is going to meet soon to know what are the next steps for the crowdfunding and the peer-to-peer lending. However, we've seen a lot, and this is coming out of hearing the market and the problem statements, a lot of other solutions that needs to be there in the market rather than those specific crowdfunding and peer-to-peer lending. So we're hoping that we're going to kick off and push more into the ready available regulations for a lot of solutions that it's needed for the financial inclusion inside the Egyptian market.
Nice. So we also have a few questions. They rather take the regional perspective. For example, Russia, what are your thoughts about a regional fintech license? To make it clear to the audience, a good example, of course, is Europe. In Europe, for example, if a bank has a license in one of the member states, it can operate in the others as well. And I think the question leads in that direction. If you're licensed in Egypt, yes, you can also operate in a certain partner state. What do you think about that?
Because what's happening in Europe, it's the same more or less jurisdiction. It's the same or less jurisdictions that it can actually fit within both countries simultaneously or seamlessly. So what we're trying to do, and this is one of the topics that we've actually taken, especially on the MENA region and the Arab world, even with the Arab Monetary Fund, that how we're going to have licensing for multiple countries for the fintechs. And this study we've actually initiated it by saying, what do we have in terms of regulations and jurisdictions inside the country, so we can actually whether we can do this co-licensing approach. So now the study has been initiated by the Arab Monetary Fund. I think it's in its early stage to know what each country can offer for the fintechs in terms of regulations and regulatory framework laws, so we can actually know how we can actually do the cross licensing across the region and see it whether it's doable or not. So until we find out.
When we talk about the region, what would that be?
This is what I'm saying. The MENA and usually the MENA region and the Arab world.
Thank you very much for that. We have one more question, which is related to regional developments. Everything in our digital world is about data sharing, and the question is, and I read it out very slowly because it's a longer one: what is your vision, Russia, for an open, safe data framework for the ecosystem to enable safer customer and innovator empowerment data sharing across the financial system?
This is more like the question that we've actually answered, that in order for us to ensure after the law to have the right framework for the open banking. Meanwhile, like we're saying, data sharing on the Innovation Lab is going to be for the testing. What we're trying to do is work on the infrastructure of everything that it's need data sharing. Like, for example, we're having a huge initiative coming up on the eKYC, most probably based on the blockchain, where we can actually ensure that we can have an eKYC solution for all the financial sector with the right validations, with the right data sharing regulations and mitigations and everything else. So this is until we reach this stage, we're doing things that we're going to take it as on a national level, on an infrastructure at the national level, especially when it comes to the eKYC. Others then will have to wait for the open banking regulations. Otherwise, as long as we're maintaining all the data protection and data sharing and following the data sharing regulations inside the institution of the financial services, they can actually open up with any fintech startup and do their work.
Thank you very much, Russia. I think these days no conversation can live without touching the COVID-19 issue. So the CBE has active over the past few weeks to cope with the challenges presented by social distancing, etc. But in general, what is the CBE doing to allow remote online banking processes and encourage less cash? What are you precisely doing now? Because it's presenting the push for that topic.
Okay, so last March, we've issued a new regulations when it comes to the electronic payment and digital financial services in light of what's happening on the coronavirus. I've been very proactively doing the regulations for 6 months because we've anticipated the lockdown and we wanted people to feel more, to be more secured, actually doing their banking and financial transactions from home, hopefully to reduce the usage of cash between individuals and citizens. So we came up with fast regulations, especially when it comes to the mobile payment, and you've touched base on the most important is the digital onboarding, where actually people can register to the mobile wallets from home, but just merely using the mobile number and their national ID number. Not only this, we've increased the limits on the transactions happening on the mobile wallets as well. It's actually increased from 6,000 daily transactions to 30,000 daily transactions and 100,000 per month. Not only this, to entice people to use it, we've done most of the services like the transfers, the bill payments on the mobile money for free. All the ATMs transactions from any ATM is withdrawals is for free. We've increased caps on the tap and go. We've actually doubled it from 300 EGP to 600 EGP. So we've allowed the interoperability between the bank accounts and the mobile money or the mobile wallets. This is mainly tackling all the banks. For the bank customers, they can self-register themselves into the mobile money. They can even self-register themselves into the internet bankings to have an easy access to their banking services and transactions from home. Not only this, we've encouraged merchants and merchant payments. So we've mandated a 0% on MDR, the merchant service fee. So can actually merchants accept all the electronic payments. We've actually endorsed the QR codes, so people now don't use only the POS, but they can actually enroll it into a much cheaper way, which is using the QR code or the unified QR code.
These are indeed very impressive steps the CBE has taken in light of the crisis. But if we take a step back and talk a bit about the impact of the crisis in the fintech startup scene, what do you think in maybe 1 year's time from now, what would have changed in the fintech startup scene in Egypt due to the current crisis?
Well, I know that the coronavirus have impacted the investment side a lot. Now, I think that there's no investments for the current being. Actually, I think that the valuation has been the valuation has been impacted as well of the startups, so it's a lower valuation for them. But I can see the very important and good point, and this is what we're trying to work on now as a team in fintech in Egypt, is to have what can actually solutions that the startups can offer to the financial institutions, because now everyone is doing digital. New normals and the aftermath is people using more digital. They don't want to use cash, they don't want to use branches, and they want to rely more on digital financial services and electronic means. So basically what we're trying to do is how we're going to leverage on the agile solutions with the startups and matchmake them with the banks in order for them to cross-sell their services. So if it's no investments, at least there's selling their solutions to the financial institution. And I think the demand is higher now from the incumbents and the financial institutions. So hopefully you're going to hear about this soon from us, so stay tuned. Of course, you're going to know it once you, if you are on the Fintech Egypt and all of its social media platforms.
Stay tuned is exactly what one visitor in our chat wants to be. He again wants to know how to get, and I want to repeat it because that's maybe the most important thing we can do tonight to connect some people from the fintech scene and environment to the central bank. Rasha, there's again the question, if I want to get a license or approval from the central bank, who or where can I go to apply or even inquiry? I know we have answered the question, but please give your answer again.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's helpful for.
Yeah, sure. So basically, usually the central banks, usually the licenses, what's happening is that we receive all the license requests from banks. But with us dealing directly regarding the regulatory sandbox, and we know that a lot of solutions needs to have to be exposed to banks, and they don't know how to reach banks, so they reach out to us. So we've done the Fintech Egypt portal where you can actually register, and you're going to find all the contact details of the regulators, not only the central bank and at the Fintech Egypt. You can reach out to us via the email on the CBE website under the sandbox and the regulatory sandbox. You're going to find the short number of the Fintech Innovation Call Center. Just to reach out to us or drop us an email. We'll definitely take you through whether you have to have the bank in order to license. Soon enough, with the new law that I've been telling you about, we're going to oversee, and we're going to overlook the PSPs, or the payment service providers. You want to know about the regulations, you can actually, we have a section for all the electronic payments regulations and all the digital financial services regulation that you're going to find on the Central Bank of Egypt website. It's in, I think it's in English and Arabic. Whether you're going to find the mobile payment regulations, you're going to find the contactless regulation, the QR unified QR code regulations, you're going to find the aggregators, the facilitators, all the Asian banking, all the regulators you're going to find on site, just if you need to know, to study and know more. If you have any questions, just reach out to us, or you can call on the 16775, the short number, and we'll reach out to you whenever we're going to get the request.
Perfect. Thanks again for repeating the ways you can communicate, or the people can reach out to you.
I would love to hear new ideas, so bring it out. And if they always stay tuned with whatever we're doing, they're going to find it on Fintech Egypt, whether we're having a new initiative, a new event, a new challenge, a new hackathon. So this, they're going to find out about it.
Perfect. There is another question about regulation in general. What are the cooperation efforts in regulation cooperation with African countries? So not only targeted on fintech sandboxes, innovation regulation, but probably more in general banking regulation and the cooperation with African countries.
Okay, so there's a lot of cooperations with of course, with the African countries. There's a huge there's a huge focus now on a country level, even on Africa and Egypt. I'll have to talk about our area in specific because we've met with a lot of African countries that are similarly like Egypt, whether in terms of socioeconomics or in terms of talent and demand and we can see cooperations happening on the SMEs side by sharing SMEs knowledge on platforms and SMEs marketplace, where we're seeing collaborations happening on the know-how for the mobile money, of course, especially countries like Kenya, and having a strong footprint on the mobile money and the mobile payment, we can actually exchange a lot of knowledge and sharing best practices with the countries that is similar to this particular type of financial inclusion and need of more services and solutions like the mobile money. Whatever startups referrals is as well as there. So whatever startup they want to introduce their solutions in the Egyptian market, they can of course come in and tap their solutions into Egyptian market, and vice versa. We're seeing a lot of startups here in Egypt that it started to move towards Africa to offer their solutions there.
Thank you. We have 10 more minutes and two more rather precise questions. We have already touched very briefly the topic around cryptocurrencies, and now there is a question about any progress of an MOU with Ripple. Is that a topic in the CBE, or is that rather a rumor? What can you tell us about that?
It's not, I think the Ripple has done an MOU, or they've started to work with one of the banks in Egypt. I believe it was announced as the National Bank of Egypt has done an MOU with the Ripple. Like we're saying, we do encourage any digital way of transfer, especially the cross-border transfers. As I said, we're aiming for the fintechs, or the fintech strategy is to focus on the financial inclusion, SME financing, and cross-border activities. So if there is an electronic money transfer or digitizing the cross-border activities between two countries, and this is where actually what we're even discussing with Abu Dhabi or ADGM regarding the co-sandboxing. But if there is any digital way to make it easier, faster, cheaper for the consumer to cross-border, we're happy to endorse and to encourage.
Nice. There's another interesting question. There's a lot of talk about leapfrogging when we talk about the digitalization of financial services. And the question is a bit, which country do you think has leapfrogged best? So what could be a role model for a country like Egypt? Is there a specific country you look at when you want to learn best practices in fintech and innovation, or?
Okay, that's a very good question. When we've started the strategy, because like I was saying, when we're doing the strategy, we're studying the world, not only the market in Egypt. So we were looking at the best practices and what's happening there. So we came up with actually we've segmented what we want to look at, so we can actually know what we really want, into three categories. We've chosen countries where the same socioeconomic, they have the same socioeconomics like Egypt, and other countries that we've looked at because they have the same demand and talent pool, like India, Kenya, whatever countries, and we have aspired countries like the UK and Singapore when it comes to fintech. So we've took all those into consideration, and we've seen countries like us, like what they were doing, countries with same demand and talent pool, what they're doing, and again the aspiring countries, and how we can actually leapfrog or how can we actually reach whatever they've reached. What I can see and what I can actually confirm is the potential in Egypt to grow fast is really it's a great potential. It's not new. We're actually one of the fastest growing startup ecosystem in the region, as well as I think the second largest in the region after the UAE. This is based on the Magnet report 2019, I guess. But our potential is to leapfrog, and the fintech is huge. We are a population of 100 million, with only 33% of the population are financially included. So there's a huge potential for digital financial service and digital means to financially include people. Not only this, 99% of the ventures of Egypt are actually MSMEs, micro and small and medium enterprise, and they are in need of a lot of digital solutions. Out of those 100 million, almost 90 or more than 95% of the population have mobile phones. So they have something in their hand that we can work on. 50% of the population actually are smartphone users and have internet on their mobile. So the room is there to grow when it comes to our field. So not only this, but we also have the talent and we have the solution. So the demand side and the solution side is there for us to grow faster on the fintech.
So almost a pitch for international investors to join fintech environment in Egypt. I like that very much.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
in relation to that, there was a very precise question: how the IBAN initiative relates to the CBE fintech environment or strategy. So, are you thinking about the IBAN as well when you talk about developing the fintech strategies for Egypt?
I'm sorry, can you, because you were breaking, can you just repeat the question quickly?
There was the question if the international bank code is in development in Egypt, and if that is also something you have on your desk and in your mind when you draft the policies for fintech development in Egypt.
So I'm not sure I'm getting the question, but usually our vision for the fintech strategy is to become the globally recognized hub, especially for the Arab and the Africa world. So so basically, whatever we're doing in terms of the fintechs, it's easily get, and this we have seen in a lot of startups happening to initiate their solutions here to go faster outside, especially in the region. And we've seen a lot of people interested in whatever in whatever solution they're doing to tap into the Egyptian to the Egyptian market. So whenever even the fintech hub, even when we're talking about the fintech fund or any of the other initiatives, we're taking it on a global level just to see how we're going to come up with new innovations inside the country and bring up the thing that we really don't have, and as well as focus and invest in the local talent so we can actually export our ideas in the African, the Arab world.
Thank you. I think we take a question, and then I think we all deserve the weekend to start. And the last question for today, Rasha, is what fintech startup in Egypt you see is doing a really great job? And I'm quite sure as a regulator, you do not want to answer that question. So I give you the chance that we do a little exercise. It's going in the same direction. If you had the chance to build a fintech with me, Rasha, and we have no limitations, what would we do?
Well, actually, there's a number of fintech startups that are doing well in the Egyptian market. It's just get it right from the beginning, and then everything is going to happen. I always say that the right fintech that is thinking of the consumer in terms of customer centricity and the best user experience is going to win at all times, because when we talk about customer centricity, we usually tend to focus, the banks are not that much focused on the best user experience and how to hook the clients and how to make super killer apps. This is actually what the new entrepreneurs and new innovative young generation is always doing, and this is what we actually capitalize on. So whenever you're doing a solution, just try to think of the consumer first and what actually the consumer needs, and try to not to find the innovation rather than solving a specific need that it's actually in the market, and try to solve it and try to make it at its best for its consumers. So anything that it's consumer centric, that it's really focusing on a very simple user experience, delivering unmet need in the market, is definitely going to thrive in the market. So and we've seen it with a lot of with a lot of startups here, just focusing on a specific segment and exactly what they actually can deliver. Instead of wanting everything, they're just focused on delivering this one thing at a time and phasing out. This is the best thing that they can actually do.
I'm still struggling what fintech we would build together, but probably this is something we're going to discuss in the future in hopefully physical meetings and not only online. Russia, I think that was a very nice conclusion, that we should do it right from the beginning, and that we should always have the customers in the middle of our thoughts and thinking. Thank you very much for that beautiful and nice webinar. It was fun to me. I hope it was fun to you. And I also hope it was fun to all of you in front of your screens at home. Russia, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you very much, everyone, for this 1 hour, and hope you're going to be safe and have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you.